Good evening, everyone, once again, and welcome back to Heaven's Vault. The story so far is that Alia's search for the roboticist Yannick Renba has ended at the wreckage of his ship. Renba was looking for the Vault, an ancient observatory which he believed to hold the only hope of preventing a darkness from overtaking the nebula. But why had Renba been hiring laborers from Elboreth? Perhaps other ancient sites, like the mysterious Withering Palace mentioned by an ancient recording, will yield more clues. And with that, let us search for the Withering Palace. It seems likely, if not, let's say it seems possible, if not likely, that this Withering Palace will be found somewhere to our galactic northwest, Renaki. Or, actually, it seems that the observatory is not there. There is someone there who knows about it. Well, good enough for us. I will prepare the chocks, misters. Seems that we have things to do on a couple of places here. But I don't think any of them are things that we actually would like to be doing. We might be able to look for the Withering Palace, but let's search for this person first. I wonder if the Verdant Pass and the Silk Pass are actually things that we can find on the map, or simply a little bit of world building with names. You sound like you don't approve of the Protectorate. I am neither for or against it in principle, misters. Although it does not appear sustainable. Why is that then? I have to ask. Left over from the Empire? Indeed, misters. The Ioxian Guard is an increasingly minor force. Let's launch a revolution. Mistress is most droll. Droll actually does mean funny. It generally is used ironically, so as I understand it, most people think that it does not. The path turns right, mistress, so should we. Isn't the Protectorate too many moves to manage? There are no threats at present. This, no doubt, eases the situation. Offhand, I can't think of any other English words or phrases that are so exclusively used ironically that
All
they
the
have come
rivers
to
of
mean
the
something
nebula
completely different.
flow to Iox in the end. If you tie off your sail, Iox is where you'll wash up. It's the heart of the nebula. Or else, it's the gutter.
Well, recently, of course, what we get fine after the past. Steer right momentarily, mistress. Just instructions for the way. I don't really need to read those aloud, I think. This is the Silk Pass. Iox wants more moons in the Protectorate. Iox has sufficient income at the moment, mistress, I think. The Ioxian population is not falling. It would be a bit better if I saw some kind of structure just then. If they made it clear when the dialogue is going to continue and when it is done. Thinking something is going to come up and do not continue talking about my own topic. I was thinking about the Hopper Eye, about the Nightingale 6. I know what it does, but what is a Hopper Eye? The eye is a focus, mistress, nothing more. It receives and re-articulates the Hopper signal. No, what's that? Shipwreck. Think of it as a funnel into which the sands of your being are poured. I would guess it dates from ancient times, mistress.
No time.
Metal candle holder, just floating there. There's an etched motif on the stem. This is the start of a fragment of text. We have an entirely new symbol here. That might become interesting. We have a people here. Doesn't really seem like we have a robot in here. No. An arm. Let's put an off here. That makes the most sense. If we put it at the start there, where the other possibility is that probably breaks up something where the apostrophe actually belongs to a word, such. That was correct. As was that. So what could this be? Acolytes, slaves, days, traitor? Goddess, your. This is something good, but I'm not quite sure if we have you as a separate component anywhere. Honestly, it would make an awful lot of sense to have this as you, especially if this is a stem final language. In that case, this question mark, point, and full bowl would be you, and the apostrophe and punct point would be some kind of beginning to it. If we assume this to be an abjad, they might be vowels. It might be a vowel component at the beginning of the word. You are great forever. We have some definite similarities with great here. We have this bow apostrophe and the 4 points here. Teardrops, let's say. But instead of a point, we have a circle. So I would assume that this is something that shares a common stem with great. However, this could be something to do with quality. And in that sense, actually a lot of these might fit. Although this would not, if this is supposed to be one word, then having another stem here is not entirely expected, but it could be a compound word. What else do we have? This squiggle here is similar to love. So it might be something good or not, depending on the cultural values of this society. I'm going to put in best. It fits thematically with the phrase, and the similarities between great and the beginning here seem too great for me to ignore. Let's go with that. She seems to agree, although I don't know if these comments are based in any way in the quality of the translation. I finished my consideration of the stone in the statues, listeners. I believe I have a rough location for where the statues were constructed. Good work. So thank you, listeners. I imagine with this we can find this site. We are in a rapid, although whether or not this actually affects us is unclear. Let's hope that it was the way that we wanted to go. Don't throw it yet. We must be getting close. The aesthetics of the travel mechanism are quite pleasing. Certainly nice to look at. Let's hop down 6. Avoid some notice. This is in comparison with actually landing there. Renaki, a market moon, far beyond the reach of Iops.
We came to Renaka like thieves, hoppering ourselves into a narrow alley between high, blank walls.
Sounds busy out there. I would estimate the local population to be around 12,000. Those of finding one man here are therefore pathetic. You get tired of being so optimistic? 6. I am neither optimistic nor pessimistic. I am statistically significant, listeners. Well, no robots are significant, 6. They have never been and they never will be. That's quite mean of her. Of course, ignoring the statistically significant portion of the phrase. Wang must have loved this place. I suppose that's why he came here. For the last time, is this wise, mistress? We are far from Iops. We are likely to attract considerable attention. You will, you mean? Mostly, mistress, yes. So once you begin asking questions, perhaps that will change. Natural. Hopefully no one will realize we never went into this alley.
Mouth into a bustling street. Hawkers shouted each other down about their wares.
Any sign of ruins on this moon? No, mistress. This moon appears well inhabited. Nothing here is old. Drugs. I could get one for the professor. The office could use more color. Or for Timur. The bar could use a rug. Perhaps if the archaeology doesn't pan out, mistress, you simply trade rugs around the nebula. Doesn't appear that we could actually get a rug here, as much as I would like to get one. What sort of place is this? It seems rich for a moon, mistress. Faith to you, fine lady. Would the lady care for a flat mango, perhaps? Good faith to you. You're new here, I can tell. I've never seen fruit this good before. Annual grapes? You see just today? What are those? Ah, the lady is from Iops. Something less exotic then. Perhaps I can interest you in a kumquat fist. A what now? You heard. How about a red pomelo? Can't possibly object to one of those. Where do you get your fruit from? It seems very fresh. It is fresh indeed. I grow it myself. Well, do let me know if you fancy something, fine lady. I'll take an apple. Just an apple, fine lady. Have watermelons, perhaps strawberries, wet fruit. Most people like my fruit. Strawberries, then. Upon it, fine lady. I prefer jewelry and gold. You want to trade jewelry for fruit? Jewelry is very good for trading, good lady. So is fruit. I don't think I want to trade any of our, our bought for items for fruit. I imagine this will make it harder to get any information from him. I really must find myself another customer. This place doesn't seem wealthy compared to Ajax. Ajax is staggeringly wealthy, mistress. Ajax is wealthy enough not to trade. I don't recognize half of these fruits. You grow them locally? I grow them in my tubs, on my roofs. I am blessed with several roofs. Never retire somewhere like this. It seems comfortable. Lanterns. I wonder if the glass is blown locally. Look at the people, 6. Are they avoiding anything? Heading anywhere with particular caution? I detect no unusual patterns of movement. Perhaps there's an open space in that direction. People are slowing down as they leave the street. See, it seems that we came from the open space, so his comment was not particularly insightful here. Although, when is 6 particularly insightful? Perhaps if we count plot relevant information, perhaps he does have some of that, but actual correct information. Should I begin stopping random passers-by about this, Amadou? Is this? You think people will talk to you? Most people run away at the sight of you. People don't like robots. Doesn't seem like we can go in there. We go in here? I imagine not. So, Appleman again. It's a pity that Alia is not interested in sampling fruit. Who is this Amadou, mistress? A merchant. But what of? I have no idea. Is it this man? If we can ask him. Or did we lose our chance by not giving him any jewelry? Here's a man that we can approach. Seems like the market continues to go here. Forgive me, do either of you know Amadou? Amadou? No. I don't know anyone by that name. Thank you. Very well, fine lady. We must be along. I don't think accosting them will help. No one seems to know the man. We have hardly collected a significant sample size yet, business. There's a few more people through here.
Seemed to never end. Shoemakers sold boots to the fruit sellers, who sold sour apples to the knife makers, whose blades the shoemakers used to make boots. I don't know if anyone on Ranaka ever slept, but if they did, I bet they bought and sold their dreams.
Pottery. They can't sell all of these, surely, unless they break some of them after every meal. This place is so active. I can't imagine Elboreth being like this. Well, and distance from Iox. C6 is surprisingly anti-Ioxian, although them being a bit of an imperial power would certainly explain why everyone seems to dislike the population. Vases. I prefer them to pots anyway. I would keep my paintbrushes in them if I painted
A fountain
flowers.
was messing about in the middle of the square, spitting at passers-by.
I wonder what people here use them for. They're for oil and water, for bathing. How could you not know that? Ah, was a stranger. Yes? My name is Alia. Can I help you? I was raiding. I'm new here, you understand. New to the market? New to this moon. You mean you sailed here? Just sat down here to tell me that? Where are you from, anyway? I'm from Elbure. Oh, Elbure isn't very nice, I'm told. Unlikely places never are. No, I suppose not. I'm looking for a man named called Amadou. A servo dealer? Yes, I know him. That is Marquet above the lizard cellar. We've already got one. This one's on loan. Must have fine friends then. What's your book? I like books. There's nothing wrong with that, is there? Of course not. Well then. I have a friend who loves reading. He was here on Renati quite recently. I see. His name is Wang. I wonder if you met him. I'm sorry, I don't think so. I suppose he sailed here as well? How else would he get here? I feel sorry for you both. And that's the last I want to say about that. Sorry to trouble you. I'll let you read. Good faith to you, lady. I must get back to my work. I wonder what she is against. Is it sailing? Is it the teleportation? There might be a number of undesirable components to space travel. Keep your eyes open. My eyes do not close, misters. They do not exist. Shoes. Where's the shopkeeper? There was steel up here and there are nothing in them. Perhaps they are so badly made they would trip you up. All these dolls don't have merchants. Aren't they worried about thieves? Perhaps these people are rich enough to be honest. Or perhaps the punishment for stealing is extreme. And fortunately, being rich is no impediment to stealing. I worked at a ski bar after high school for a winter season. This was not a particularly fun job for me. I did not enjoy it. Perhaps it was educational in a way. But there was a period of time called the Swine Week or Pig Week, during which the customers were almost entirely business travelers, so quite wealthy individuals. And as you can imagine, they wanted special treatment. No surprise there. But during that period of time, I was selling some hot dogs at this bar at the time. I was running out of sausages, and I left my stall to go to the kitchen to put some more in the oven. When I returned, the bouncers told me that the quite wealthy customers had systematically helped themselves to the sausages that still survived in the boiler. There's a steam device that keeps them warm after they are cooked. And after that, I sold all of my sausages before leaving the stall to get new ones. It's extremely banal of them to steal sausages from an unmanned stall. You'd think business travelers would be ashamed at that. I mean, I certainly would be ashamed at doing that, but I am of course not a businessman. Alright, smells good, must be fresh. I cannot imagine how it smells. It's made from mouldering flowers, is that correct?
Fried meat, spiced apple, fresh leather, wealth.
I don't think so, no. Referring to the flower sounding thing that Six assumes bread is made of. Isn't he supposed to have some sort of spectrometer to him? Should be able to tell what they are made of. Can you imagine a fountain like this on Elboreth? Spilling water into the street? This place is so wealthy. Throwing water about like it's nothing. Where does the water come from? Is there a wellspring right here? No, misters. I believe the water is pumped up and cycled. Show of wealth, then. My favorite kind of fountain is actually those kinds of field fountains. If you have been to the main promenade in Nice, Nissa, southern France, they have one at the Place du something. It's one of those where you have an entire area. Let's say, imagine this brick area here that is full of very small fountainheads. So they make these nice patterns with the fountains. There is actually one in the town where I live right now as well, although much smaller, not as imposing. I think it mostly gets used for small children to run through as they are playing in the square where it is situated. A cook, Hungary 6, hilarious. Baskets, woven from grass. One basket looks the same as another to me, misters. There's someone we can talk to here. Although I don't know if we need to, if we already found where. No, he's moving away. Jars for water. Or oil, perhaps. They seem to sell everything here. Yeah. Those are lizards, aren't they? Gecko. All colors. You sell lizards? Buy gecko? Finest gecko, it climbs walls. Can reach hard to reach places. How much does one cost? 33. 33 what? 33. Good age for lizard. Gecko now or gecko later? 6, I'm going to buy a gecko. I will not carry it, misters. Don't be a kumquat fish, 6. You'll like it. You two will be friends. You can bicker about me behind my back. I'm not having a gecko clambering around my lower drawers. Gecko? Gecko now, please. Good choice. Let's see what you bought. I prefer ancient and mysterious things. No, I don't think I want to give her anything. I do want the gecko. I think we might be able to use it for some plot purposes later. But I am too attached to my finds. Tell me, do you know a man named Amadou? Gecko called Eleonora, my mother's name. I don't want a gecko, but my robot does. My mistress is as tempting humor. Not robot gecko. Gecko, live gecko. Gecko, very practical, very clean. No baiting. What is it used for? Gecko eats flies. You snaffle gecko, good price, good legs. You don't know Amadou? A stonefish tent is above yours. Everyone knows Amadou. Amadou does not buy geckos. I don't know where.
A fat man with a scarf flashed a cheeky smile at me as he walked away.
Do you think everyone here is like that? It would seem improbable. Surely they would all have starved. Well, it seems Amadou is here, up here. I suppose you think the gecko might know the whereabouts of a lost palace? Might be descended from a great king gecko of yesteryear. It's remarks like that that make me wish I had a gecko. This looks interesting. Who are you? You're Amadou? What do you want? I come from Iox. Iox? Well now. Isn't a filthy, sterile river rat. What makes you say that? Only filth flows along the Stasius. Everyone knows that. Still, I'm happy to hear my reputation is spreading. These are my servos and I own them legitimately. A friend of mine told me to talk to you. I'm looking for an observatory. So that the Ioxian with the big ears has sent a bigger Ioxian. What is my discovery worth to this one? I have found an observatory, it is true. You buy robots as well as sell them? Now you are beginning to understand me, I think. It is a fine-looking robot you have. I'd happily trade the robot, but it isn't mine to trade. I don't see anyone else around. Mistress, please. I'm not yours to sell. Be quiet, Six. I'm talking to a human. Are you going to cut away Six's head? Certainly not. My servos are in prime condition, but they don't have heads is their decision. Yours is a masterpiece. I want to know what you have before we make a deal. If I agree to anything. How old is the observatory? What state is it in? Let me tell you about the observatory. I've walked its corridors, seen ancient machines. It's built on 3 levels. Each is circular, each wider than the one above. It looks like it must topple down from the sky, and yet it stands. But perhaps that is enough for you. That's not enough. I disagree, fine lady. Now we discuss a price. I don't like your terms. I will tell you about the corridors of glass, the machines, the gigantic servos buried deep below the crust. Are you sure you won't trade? I won't trade. So be it. And so the observatory is lost once more. I'll find it myself. Very well. But if you ever find a servo, think of Amadou. His business is drying up by the day. Business? What just happened? Just leave it.
The size of this place was nothing compared to Elbereth. But it was more packed with life. More colour, more people, more business, more hope.
I imagine we can find the observatory without giving up anything.
And from behind me came the patter of steps.
Wait, please. Yes? Spoke to Amadou. You know him? He's my father. Your father? That's right. So does he listen to you? Your father? You're thinking I can do some of your haggling for you. Well? I don't know you. You aren't my friend. I could be. You must think I'm desperately lonely. You really are a sailor, aren't you? Tell me about sailing. Does it hurt? No, it doesn't hurt. Unless it hurts your hearts a little. You should try it with someone you trust. You're going now? Back to your ship? Out there, somewhere? I've got places to go. Find. Disgusting. It sounds like she wants to come along. Let's see if we can actually take her. The island crystals from the site of Renba's cache must have been mined during the Empire period. Make things like the brooch Renba found. There might be some evidence of that work, or some artifacts from connected sites. A bit of a non sequitur there. See if we can find the girl. Best not to go wandering off. This is a big moon. The robot I met on the hideout moon 6 did something strange. Yes, mistress? It said a great darkness was coming. What did it mean? What do you think? Master Renba did not lose his life out there without some cause. Hopefully not. Of course, I imagine most people who die in motor accidents like he did actually do die without a cause. Unfortunately for them. Although I don't know if dying for a cause or without a cause is that much different. Once you're dead anyway. I'm thinking. About what exactly, mistress? Be quiet, 6. This is a busy district. Heavily populated. Most of Ranaki's population is urban, mistress. The open spaces are reserved for cultivation. Maybe we could ship some people from Elboret to here. So they could carry a few more people. How would you choose which ones came? Activate the hopper 6. And so we left the surface of Ranaki, the market moon. The robots are dug from deep below the crust, and the observatory has them as well. It seems likely that there is some fundamental connection between Ajax and the observatory. If Ajax were not an urban center of this society, I would start with the assumption that the observatory is on Ajax. I wonder if she'll ever sail. Imagine spending your whole life stuck out here on the fringes. We are all stuck somewhere, mistress. The question is, can we see the wall? Let's sail off. We are receiving a message from Professor Miyari. Put that through. I was not awaiting permission, mistress. Alia, where are you? I thought you had 6 following me. You overestimate your importance, my dear. Never mind, it's an endearing trait. This isn't a social call. I wanted to let you know we are having a celebration for Renba here at the university. You don't have to attend, but I thought I'd let you know. I didn't know him. Maybe if you come, you can meet some people. Then you'll be able to attend their funerals in good faith. Come home, Alia, right away. That is all she sent, mistress. Actually, let's go. That sounds quite interesting. Once we get to Iox, I think I'm going to go into my archaeomagnetism digression, and after that, I'm going to see if we can look for the Withering Palace. That seems to be the case. But let's go to Iox first. Did I actually? Yeah, sailing to Iox, I did manage to set the route correctly. So are robots capable of hope? Certainly. We calculate odds, of course. Even the most unlikely outcomes must always eventually occur. Hope is a mathematical certainty. You should go right, mistress. I like that. The mathematics does not care whether you like it or not, mistress. I'm not quite convinced. Of course, this is true if we assume that there is an infinite amount of time to try things out in. However, this is of course not the case. Another airless ruin some distance away on the left. So let's pick for the left and approach the ruin. The ruin here appears to date from the earliest days of the nebula, mistress. It will only take a few moments. We recovered a curved wooden fragment from a probe. Must have come from somewhere close to here. It has been inscribed with the ancient script as well. This is one end of a broken fragment of text. You are... I think this will be another something again related to we. Star at the end makes sense. In makes sense on a conceptual level, but whether or not there will actually be a word with only two symbols, well, it's possible. R is a single one. We have a we here, but I think it is modified by this double curve here. So technically it would not be we, it would be us or our or something like that. Let's try positioning the in first. It was not helpful. Perhaps with or off. We here. Yeah, something is wrong. I agree. We does not belong here. Can I fit a star here somehow? No, I cannot. Let's try the in. Again, not correct. Let's try the width here. Oh, the star was the part that was clearly incorrect. That's interesting. Let's try U R X in Y. This is something to do with the personal pronouns once again. Most likely plural, since it has this these things here. Something with us. one of us, welcome. In something related to stars, could be sky. Shares an element with garden, so it might be a place of stars. That makes sense with sky. Let's go with that. You are welcome in sky. I guess that comes from the same source as the candle holder. The one we found a ruin by the river. The Withering Palace 6. Somewhere in the Withering Ways, perhaps? By the rivers. I once visited a dried out rapids that had been harnessed for hydropower. This was in Finland. They played. There was I think, daily or weekly presentation where they let water through the power plant and into the dried out rapids. A metamorphic structure. Actually, I'm going to draw you some something a bit of that thing. It was clearly directional. Interestingly, I think it was the western side that was much deeper, and the right side from the bridge where I watched, I think, was the eastern side. In comparison, was much shallower. And I think I remember that there was a clearly identifiable metamorphic structure there, which was surprising to me, as I was under the impression that Finland is mostly magmatic rocks, granite and that kind of thing. I think the visible structures were here along the high, pardon me, I forgot to switch it again. So this is what it's supposed to look like. Along the steep edge, and then there would have been a field of sharp rocks where the metamorphic bends would have broken off during the lifetime of this river. So up here, the structure would be more or less intact, and historically this would have been much higher, but they had been worn away by the work of the water. So anyway, once a day or perhaps once a week, they had this show where they let water into this thing. I was around for that, which was perhaps not quite as dramatic as they made it out to be. They played patriotic music, which I found a little funny, to be honest. Played patriotic music and let water into the old rapids. So that was my story about rapids. Let's carry on our way. Then return to the game and carry on. You said 4 was unlucky. How exactly? It was short and rather sharp. If recollecting the event causes you distress, I will forego knowing. Oh, I don't mind it. But you might. The cyclones. Yep. Oh, We are taking the scenic route this time, it seems. It seems that, yes, there is only a one-way route to get to Renaki. There's an unexplored ruin here, unfortunately. Perhaps we will have time to go there sometime.
Mayari didn't know about the Nightingale. I would hitch lifts with robot couriers to Elbereth, then slip away to play aboard the ship. Until one day, when Oroi reckoned she could figure out how to launch it. And of course, I didn't know how to stop. I pretty much crashed into the dock on Iox.
But the goddess and all her fingers. So, mistress, what did happen to Form? Four fell in a canyon. That seems careless. When I say fell, he doesn't seem to be responding to this. Place the waters. It seems that the people on Renaki have a different religion than the ones on Iox and its cultural sphere. But them talking about the rivers as sewers is interesting. 3 to 5 didn't take that long, really. It was something of a blur. The Ioxian and in general the, let's say, post-imperial areas seem to regard these rivers as rather sacred. Something that the spirits of the dead move around in. The Renaki find them to be worse. Do you like other robots, 6? I've not spent much time with them. But you have met some. A few. They always struck me as rather predictable. Oh, and it went the wrong way around. I think I saw something at the water's edge. But we passed it now. How unfortunate. On the right. Correct. Again. Now let's keep our eyes open. Oh, now I'm getting into this character intonation. I do not have friendships with other robots, if that's what you mean. Would you like some friends? Check, set up a playdate. I'm quite content, mistress. The shipwreck appears to date from the Ioxian Empire, mistress. I will investigate. A wooden devotional icon of a spiral. Somewhere close. It's like a hippo. Fractured, as usual. The rivers seem to fit, and protection seems to fit. As well as you. So, not protection. What else do we have for protection? Home? Garden, love, safe, home. Makes sense. Love, shoot, time. May. My rivers carry you home. Makes sense for devotional item. This is certainly ideologically Ioxian. Now the Withering Palace should be easier to find. We'll find you some robots on Ajax. Mistress, it is not like you to fraternize. It's not like you fraternize with other humans. We are very similar, perhaps. Mistress, I do not wish to discuss this further. As you like. I appreciate your understanding, Mistress. Thank you. This down 6. Renba's funeral is about to start. Do you think 6? I believe they are just beginning, Mistress. We're not too late then. I believe our timing to be perfect, Mistress. Alia, quickly. Miari was waiting for you to arrive. I wasn't sure you were really coming. How are you doing, Huang? Me? I'm fine. It's sad, but I didn't know Janiki well. Lead the way, Huang. I will wait here, Mistress. Try not to rust. I will lick myself clean, Mistress. It seems that 6 has become a joker as well. Janiki was a great believer in the loop. Do you believe in it, Huang? Of course. The loop makes sense. How exactly? Seems like quite a platitude. Try to keep your head bowed. Here she comes. She's not making the slightest effort, I see. Friends, colleagues, brothers and sisters, thank you for coming. Today we gather to recommend our brother Janik Renba to the waters. Who's the lady? I didn't recognize her. I think that's Renba's mother. I wondered if you knew her. She's from Elboreth. Good of Miare to invite her. Of course she invited her. Wouldn't you expect your mother at your funeral? Janiki Renba was our friend, our brother, our teacher, our summer confidant. Father is an inspiration. He left us too soon, but with trust he will be returned. Renba often traveled to Elboreth to see his family. Just like you in that way. I don't have any family. I never even knew my mother. Never? I think she died when I was young. I don't really know. My mother was a carpenter. Made a lot of the chairs in this palace, this place. She's pretty proud of me. Janiki's departure is a deep loss to the university. Work here has changed our little community more than most of you may know. But it is his absence, however brief, that will be truly felt. He really believes this. Of course. What do you believe?
Mayari paused a moment and then emptied something out of the hourglass.
So Renba begins another journey around the Great Loop. As we remember him, so he sails the rivers above. What did Nyare pour into the river? Renba's ashes. That's possible. They don't have his body. What? Why would you say that? Disgusting thing to say. You can hear us, you know.
The people began to sing. The words were weird and old. The sound drifted up and away into the nebula. Maybe Remba could hear us. Maybe not. Didn't matter. It was beautiful anyway.
Those that are gone will return. Those that return will depart.
The chanting died away. There were echoes. Then they were gone too.
Friends, thank you for coming. Janiki will be grateful for your support.
The people began to murmur, then to talk.
Alia, a beautiful service, don't you think? My first funeral. Not your first. What did she mean by not my first? The loop, Alia. She's talking about the loop. Does she even look that sad to you? No, but she does not want to show her emotion in public. Good faith. Good faith. Good faith to you. I am from Elborek too. I think he's coming back. I can't understand it. They mean well, I think. My son was one of them. In the end, he was happy here. Did you know my boy? I went looking for him when he disappeared. Disappeared? What do you mean? They told me his heart gave out. Alia, see you met Anit. Mrs. Elazara here is one of our most gifted thinkers. Please, I'd like to spend some time with my boy. I barely saw him when he was alive. He didn't visit Elborek? Not for years. His work was so important to him. Please. Kaleidoscope of lies, then. I imagine he was doing something secret while he claimed to be from Elborek. Lovely eulogy. Barely sufficient. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I know you are skeptical of the loop. He believed, so here I am. I would appreciate that. Renba was from Elborek? Indeed. You think you were the only shining jewel from the mine. He never mentioned it. Did you ever speak to him? I doubt you did. Seems possible. I see Huang even has his books with him while hanging around with his one-sided crush. Perhaps that's the reason it is one-sided. I would suggest him to try interacting with Alia a bit more. My dear, come see me in my office if you want to. I don't, but this might be interesting. So were you off while you were buried? Asleep? That's why you can't remember it? I do not know, mistress. I cannot remember. Maybe the roboticist wiped your memory after they dug you up. I'd been buried alive for 100 years. I'd be mad. Longer than that. 1,000 years, perhaps. But I cannot remember them. Thinking our guess about Renba finding a robot on Marsi must be wrong. The box was old artifacts, nothing to do with robots at all. Indeed, Misters. The robots seem to be on the Withering Palace, in any case, or the observatory. Unless these are the same location, which is in itself quite possible. Alia, I wanted to thank you for coming to the service. His mother appreciated having another Elborethian there. His mother seemed to think he died here, on Iox. What did you tell her? I told her he had an accident with his equipment. I didn't tell her that her son had disappeared off river in the depths of the nebula. She would worry for his soul, Alia. You can understand that. Why would she worry for his soul? Souls are carried by the rivers, Alia. The rivers are nothing but ghosts and voices. To die off river is unthinkable. Ah, it seems that was it. Let's check the books. We have more books than Huang. Those books are not his, nor are these ones mine. Time to leave. And after that, it will be seeing you, Alia. It will be time to talk about magnetism again a little bit. Let's go. Doesn't seem like Huang wanted to talk all that much anyway. And so we left the university. I wonder if the timeline becomes particularly relevant at some point in the story. Perhaps not. Oh, the next stop is looking for the withering whatever. But before that, let's have a bit of a pause to talk about magnetism once again. So, last time, if you were there, we talked about how magnetism comes to be. So we have the electrons, and we might have one or two of them on the first energy level. If we have a paired amount, this is paramagnetic. As a weak magnetic force along the external magnetic field. If it is pairless, this is diamagnetic. This has quite a small magnetic force against the prevailing magnetic field. And if we have more energy levels that are all unpaired, then this is ferromagnetism. I think I got to this last time. I think I got a bit had my train of thought broken by the raid. And in any case, I wasn't really in the mindset to talk about magnetism all that much. Now I am more in the mood. As you might imagine, ferromagnets have a magnetic force along the external magnetic field, and it is consequently larger and larger for every unpaired energy level that you have. Now that I said this, I think I did actually get to this last time. So, you have several types of ferromagnetism. You have true ferromagnetism. All of these are ferromagnetic structures which have a crystal structure to them. So all of these crystal regions have their own smaller ferromagnetic field, and how they are oriented with respect to each other is what defines the subtype of ferromagnetism. So true ferromagnetism is the one where they are all pointed in the same way. This is the strongest one, of course, and permanent magnets that you set on your fridge door, or that you use to lift something, although generally electromagnets are used for that, will be ferromagnets. Iron is also ferromagnetic, but as you can imagine, there is a sliding scale of strength. Some are more magnetic than others. For example, I think some of the strongest ones are made of neodymium. I'm not quite sure what that is. It has to be some kind of composite metal. I don't think it's an element. I don't remember anything with a name like that on the table of elements. So the other one is anti-ferromagnetic. This is one where you have a where all of the fields, the crystal domains, cancel each other out. This actually ends up being even weaker than diamagnetism, but it is not zero. As you know, magnetic fields have their direction. They are three-dimensional. So actually coming up with a geometry that actually cancels everything out is quite difficult, and it does not happen in nature. Then the midway point is ferrimagnetism with an I. In this case, there is a prevailing direction for the domains, and the some effect is that there is a force along some direction, but it is not quite as strong as if it was purely ferromagnetic. Playing around with the geometries of magnetic fields is what gives you magnetic levitation, for example. You might be familiar with the concept on some level. This is the thing where you have a track that you run along, and you have a train or some other object running along up here. So how do you get it to first levitate, second to move forwards, and how do you get it not to fall off? This is done with some quite complicated geometry of magnets. I have seen a presentation about this. I have seen images of the kinds of magnet combinations that can hold something up without letting it drift away from the center point, and of those that make things move forward, and of those that I think they had 3 components for this, but now that I think about it, it feels like they would only need 2, one to keep it up and centered and one to move it forwards. Perhaps I misremember. Perhaps there's one just for the levitation and one for the keeping it in the middle. And in any case, for these electromagnets are used. So how does electromagnetism work? This is because of electromagnetic induction, which you might be familiar with from induction ovens, for example. To put it simply, when you have a excuse me, not this way. This is going to make it more oh well, I drew it the wrong way around. Let's keep with this one. You have a an electric current flowing through a coil, and the electric current induces a magnetic field. So this is just what electromagnetic induction is. The direction is given by the right-hand rule. So if you imagine your fingers, make a fist, a loose fist, and your fingers twisting along the rotation of the electricity, and your thumb will point in the direction of the magnetic moment that is caused by the electromagnet. So it ends up being like this. The electricity enters this way, runs around here and goes out that way, and the magnetic moment or force or magnetic field is has its south pole here and its north pole here, and the field goes around like this, of course, three-dimensionally. So that's the basics to magnetism. And then once we get to magnetism in archaeology, there are let's start with magnetism, archaeological magnetism in general. This is all about the various iron oxides in the soil. There are three that are extremely common. The first one is hematite. This is also known as red ochre, for example. If you read about some Stone Age burials where the people were strewn with red ochre, this is hematite powder. In some areas you find it in the soil in large amounts. For example, in Northern Europe, traditional red paint has been made out of hematite. This is anti-ferromagnetic, so extremely some magnetic field that an item made of hematite, generally it's powder, so it doesn't really, you can't make items out of it, has an extremely weak magnetic field. However, when this reduces, I think, it turns into magnetite. This is strongly magnetic enough. It is ferromagnetic that if you get a rock of magnetite in a laboratory, for example at a geology class like I have, you can move it with a permanent magnet, but generally you will not be able to lift it. So you can tell that the magnetic field of this magnetite is much greater than that of hematite. Then what happens if magnetite oxidizes? Reduction and oxidization are the complementary chemical processes. Oxidization is where you take oxygen into a substance and you get an oxide. Reduction is where the process runs in the other direction. So, for example, you would reduce iron ore to get elemental iron. In this case, these are all oxides, so there is no elemental iron involved. They simply reshuffle the elemental iron and oxygen to make different crystals, which leads to them having different ferromagnetic abilities, let's say. I can't find the correct word. So in general, magnetite oxidizes into goethite. This is named after the German poet Goethe, I think. But I wouldn't expect English speakers to pronounce him as Go. Perhaps goethite. Who knows? I don't care. The important part is that this is ferromagnetic as well. So generally, once this process has occurred, it does not reverse itself. It can, but it is extremely irregular. Now then, there are a number of processes that cause this reduction. A number of them are involved in the soil forming processes. So if you imagine the soil, you have a certain depth to which the soil is oxidized, reduced to magnetite. So the topsoil is more strongly magnetic than the bottom soil is. This is actually not only the general case, but this is also something that is quite useful for archaeology. Or you see, this is nature. Then we have excavation. When people in the past have made holes in the earth, as they are wont to do, pits to store garbage in, pits to store giant pottery in, so the contents keep cool, for example. Pits to live in. A number of cultures in different times around the world have used pit houses, where you dig a hole into the earth and start building in the hole. So the houses end up being halfway underground. But the first level is something that we would call a kind of a cellar today, perhaps. Or they dig trenches, ditches, whatever they dig, they end up with a hole. And if they dig this, or even if they do not dig it through the topsoil, if they dig it at all, really, what ends up happening if they keep this this pit open for an extended period of time, some decades, this doesn't happen in 20 years even, the bottom of the ditch or pit begins to reduce. So you end up with more strongly magnetic material at the bottom of the ditch. And of course, generally, when it gets slowly filled, it is filled with topsoil, not bottom soil. So you end up with all of this here being more strongly magnetic than anything in the vicinity here. And if you measure the vertical gradient of the Earth's magnetic field up here, you end up noticing that there is an area with stronger magnetism. This is called magnetic survey, I think. Geomagnetic survey. Basically, you just map out an area that you want to research, and let's say you have a village. This might have a black. Depending on what country you live in, the images will be either black to white or white to black. I am used to black being positive, and therefore meaning that the local anomaly is directed up. So above the thing, the Earth's magnetic field is very slightly more strongly pointed upwards, and outside of it, it is comparatively slightly more strongly pointed downwards. Of course, this isn't absolutely downwards. Some magnetic field of the Earth is so strong that these local anomalies do not register in the direction that it points. They are local differences. So instead of the local magnetic field being like this, it's going to be like this, and the difference is something like this here. So extremely tiny. But when you have extremely accurate devices, you can measure it. So imagining an archaeological site that has been magnetically surveyed, you might see a ditch, a fortification of the village. Then you would see some dunes. If there has been a historical river next to the village that has dried up since then. That's another thing you can see with magnetism. You would see some, depending on the kinds of buildings they built. Let's imagine this is a pit house village. say, the Middle Ages in Poland or Germany or Eastern Germany, you would see these pits. Some of them might be houses, some of them might be, waste pits, that kind of thing. Some of them might be whatever. For whichever reason you might make a hole in the earth. And you might notice that you might have a, this is of course oriented north, you would have a strongly positive flanked by a bit of negative on the south and more clearly negative on the north side. And this might be a workshop, for example, for glassware or ironware, or even ceramics. The problem is that the magnetic method is not, it is, oh, hello, Big D20. I'm currently, we are talking about magnetism again, and specifically magnetism for the purposes of archaeology. Let's not go through magnetism in general again, but I'll recap the archaeological part since we are at the beginning. Most of the iron in the earth soil is hematite. This is anti-ferrimagnetic, very weak. This reduces into magnetite, which again reduces to goethite. Both of these are ferrimagnetic, so they are more strongly magnetic than the hematite. In nature, you have this topsoil that is more strongly magnetic, and if you excavate into the soil, you end up with this parcel of area where the magnetized earth goes deeper than where people have not dug around. And then I was drawing an example of what you might find with a magnetic survey. So when you take magnetic measurements over, let's say, a field, you might find a paleochannel. If there was a river here, then you might find some ditches, perhaps fortifications of the village. If this is the kind of village where they had a pit houses, you might find the bottoms of the houses. If there's been some high temperature work, ceramic ovens, glass ovens, iron ovens, you might be able to identify that. And as I was getting to when you arrived, the thing is that this thing here, you can't differentiate that between a, let's say, a ceramic oven and a an iron object that is pointed in the correct direction, since what we have is the geometry and the strength of the magnetic field. So if there is a strongly magnetic object that just happens to be oriented along the Earth's magnetic field, you just don't know. Because of this, you would like to use other methods of archaeological geophysics as well. So the reasons that this kind of thing happens, the excavation is why the pits and ditches are identifiable. In the case of the sand dunes of the Paleochannel, the old river, this is because the river digs itself into the earth, and where again, when it dries up, you end up with simply more mass that is magnetized. In addition to that, there are bacteria. This mostly ties to the pits here. The magnetotactic bacteria also reduce hematite into magnetite, and these bacteria live in biological waste, so food waste, animal sacrifice pits, wooden waste. So technically, it is possible to see a palisade with the magnetic method, but that's dependent on how expensive the devices you are using to measure the magnetic field are. You have to have the the better ones to see palisades. So what else do we have? Excavation, bacteria, heat. This is the reason that the ovens, for example, become strongly magnetized. Part of this is that a high heat reduces, is a reductive environment in itself. It removes oxygen from the iron. Another reason is that there is a so-called Curie point, I think named after Marie Curie, the Polish physicist, but I'm not quite sure. This is around 800 degrees centigrade for most soils, as I recall. And at this point, the soil becomes ductile. It is not liquid, but let's say it is liquid enough that the magnetic particles within the soil can reorient themselves along the Earth's magnetic field. This, of course, happens because all magnetic things, so everything, always has a magnetic force that pulls it either towards the Earth's magnetic field or away from it. In either case, the effect is that it orients itself to be collinear with the magnetic field, whether or not it is in the same direction or in the same different direction for diamagnetic objects. Then you have the what are these called in English? Let's just call them items. You have more strongly magnetic items than others. For example, of course, ceramics are more strongly magnetic because of the heat and the Curie point. Actually, let's list them up here a bit. You have ceramics. Then you have ironware. This is generally, of course, not the case for pre-Iron Age sites. So if you are investigating a Stone Age village and you have a huge amount of ironware strewn around the field, it's going to be modern. It's going to be things that fall off tractors, for example, bottle caps that the farmers, from the beer bottles that the farmers used to enjoy while driving their tractors. This is something that actually happened in the past, in the not so distant past. I think it's unusual today, but used to happen. And what else can you imagine? Nails, in general, things that fall from vehicles or people moving around there. Of course, the ironware can be archaeologically interesting if you are at a site from the Iron Age or past that. For example, battlefield archaeology is often interested in finding ironware. For example, lead shot from muskets is not very magnetic, I don't think so. But generally where firing has taken place, people have died, and from their uniforms, things that are more strongly magnetic have fallen off. So you might be able to identify places where, formation battles that took place, where the soldiers stood when they fired at each other, that kind of thing. And of course, when you are at a, say, a Roman site, the iron items that the Romans carried around might have fallen. Some ironware might be a key from a Roman. This might be interesting. You might actually want to find it. Then stones or rocks are an interesting one as well. There is a differentiation between rocks. You have sedimentary. So these are the kind of sandstone. They are basically just a sediment, so sand, silt, thing like that, that has been pressed into stone under great pressure. As I understand it, this mostly happens on the sea bottom. But of course, the Continental plates like to move, so former sand that was pressed into sandstone can be found outside of the sea bottom as well. Then on the opposite side you have magmatic stones. Sedimentary stones are the weakest ones. They have the weakest magnetic field. Oh, hello, Roxing. You have found us talking about archaeomagnetism, or magnetism for archaeological purposes. If we want to be quite exact, archaeomagnetism is a topic that I have not yet come to. It is a special case of the magnetism of ceramics or ovens. So sedimentary rocks are extremely weakly magnetic. So you might see if you are, let's imagine this church, this village has a church to it. The only building with a stone foundation to it. If this was made of sedimentary stone, as is entirely possible, you would see it in the magnetic survey as a white structure, because it would be weaker than the more weakly magnetic than the circumstances that it finds itself in. Magmatic rocks are, on the other side, extremely strongly magnetic. They are like large iron items for the purpose of archaeological magnetism. You can generally tell them apart because they are more diffuse. Is this a detour to Heaven's Vault? Yes, this is a digression from Heaven's Vault. Last week's episode of Heaven's Vault contained the spy robot being extremely wrong about magnetism. So I went on a detour towards magnetism as a concept. And in retrospect, I really should have talked about archaeological uses of magnetism. In that context, it would have made a lot of sense. But I guess I was tired or confused somehow. I didn't think of it. So I took it upon myself to make a digression into archaeological magnetism. Anyway, so magmatic stones are more diffuse. Instead of, let's imagine this as a profile. An iron item would be quite sharp and quite strong, and while magmatic stones can be quite strong as well, they are more diffuse, so it is not as sharply black and white, and instead you have this large area with positive and or negative measurements. So if the foundation here was made out of granite, for example, you would see these extremely bold black and white areas that would make it much more difficult to actually identify what exactly the structure is. And then you have metamorphic rocks in the middle. Metamorphic rocks are either magmatic or sedimentary rocks that have been heated at some point, usually by the heat of the Earth's crust, and instead of being flat, for example for sedimentary rocks, instead of being flat, they have been twisted around. This means that metamorphic rocks can have either sedimentary or magmatic origin, for one, and the metamorphic processes affect the magnetism as well. So you can't really, if you talk about metamorphic rocks as a concept, you can't really say that they are either negative or positive. They can be anything, or they can even be completely invisible to the magnetic method. So then let's actually get to archaeomagnetism as strictly defined. This is where we get to remanent magnetism from heat processes. So we have an oven here. Let's say it's a glass blowing. It's a glass blower's workshop in the Middle Ages, and this is quite strongly magnetic along the magnetic field of that time. The Earth's magnetic field is caused by the movement of the molten outer core of the Earth. So in a way you could say that it's the Earth's magnetic field is a kind of electromagnet, as it is caused by the movement of electrons. And because of this, the direction of the magnetic field can change. So if we think of this as being in the field, magnetic fields have an inclination and a declination. The declination is what the difference from north is as degrees, and the inclination is how far up it is pointed from horizontal. In Europe, generally, the direction of the magnetic field is mostly south and up. In the southern hemisphere, for example, in South Africa or Chile, it would be down and south. This is can be a question that gets interesting for archaeology as well, but not yet. So it might be that now, today, the magnetic field is, let's say, the declination is... actually, I think the declination is a difference from south. So the declination might be 2 degrees. And the inclination might be 70 degrees. However, back then, in the Middle Ages, it might have been that the declination, for example, was -5 degrees. So it wasn't a little bit east of south, it was a little bit west of south. And let's say that the inclination was 65 degrees. So not a huge difference, but this is a difference that we can measure and document. And what archaeomagnetism, strictly speaking, is using this information to find out at which time this oven was in use. Because of course it had its magnetizing process while it was being heated, and after it stopped being heated, it has retained the magnetic items, the magnetic nature that it gained at that time, and has not changed. So if we look up calibration curves, we might be able to date when this thing has been created. Question: how far back can you use magnetic archaeology to find out anything discernible? This is basically a cultural question. When we are talking about magnetic survey like this, this process is basically one way. So once it has happened, it stays that way. So in principle, you could find anything from any period of time in the past, provided that the soil has not accumulated enough to bury it so deep that the measuring devices that we have are no longer able to tell the difference, because magnetic fields get weaker extremely quickly. Practically, from the Neolithic, I don't think I have ever seen any magnetic surveys that have run into any Mesolithic or earlier finds. So basically farming cities, villages. By the time people start living in one place, building fortifications, building villages, making ceramics, you can identify these activities with the magnetic method. So, getting back to the oven, so we might be able to date the case of the oven. This is, of course, nice. There are other dating methods as well, the radiological and luminance methods that we talked about earlier and in earlier episodes. So this is not always, this might not even be the best way to date the oven. If you find some charcoal in it, it might be easier and cheaper to just have that carbon dated. Who knows? But this is possible, and it sometimes gets done. Where it gets more interesting is with ceramics. In the case of ceramics, we have the oven, and inside the oven, the ceramics are burned, fired in a certain orientation. And if we are able to find out, for example, we know what time period this happened in, we know in which place it happened. So, inputs. Region, let's say this is Terra Sigillata, ceramics from Roman North Africa. Region. Time period. We have both of these. So, this would tell us what the prevailing magnetic field would have been at that point. And if we have an entire pot and we measure it thoroughly, we can find out in which direction the magnetic field of the pot in itself is. The MF of the item. And what we can get out of this is its orientation. So how the pots were laid out in the oven in order to be fired. This is not a topic that particularly interests me, but the archaeologists who work with ceramics, I imagine, would be quite interested in this information. I don't know what they would do with it. Since this is not something that I really understand, I'm sure that there is some further information or interest. For example, how they are laid out in the oven might have something to do with the way that they are produced, but I don't know anything about that, unfortunately. So that was archaeomagnetism. There was something that I thought that I might talk about as well, related to archaeological geophysics. It might be archaeological geophysics outside magnetism, but I think I am out of steam for the digression now. So I hope those who have been interested in archaeological magnetism will be interested in Heaven's Vault as well, as I will continue playing it for a little bit. In general, the archaeology methods for archaeological geophysics are extremely varied, depending on. Yes, we can look for the Withering Palace now. That's quite good. Basically, if you can think of a fast Earth, solid Earth geophysical method, you can somehow use it for archaeology as well. Radar is an obvious one. Of course, ground penetrating radar is just radar. It sends signals into the Earth that come back, and you time how long it took for them to get back, and you can calculate how deep things are in the Earth. with electric resistivity to just run electricity through the soil and then measure the electric potential. That is the speed at which the electric field changes. So this is the derivative of the electric field, which is in itself caused by the electric current. And that will tell you what kinds of materials are there in the soil. This can be good, for example, for finding stone structures. Then you have electromagnetic induction, where you use an induced magnetic field to, let's say, heat up items inside the earth. This is the same mechanism that induction kettles use. So you have an inductor in the above the oven, which uses magnetic fields to heat up the bottom of the pot. This gets hotter because the changing magnetic field causes a circulation of electricity in the bottom of the pot. And of course, when you run electricity through something, it gets hotter. And then when this electricity in the item inside the soil weakens again, it produces a secondary magnetic field that gets picked up by the device. This thing also tells you about the electric and magnetic attributes of things, parts of the soil, but it works slightly differently than the direct methods, so the results are not quite comparable. For example, magnetic induction cannot tell you the direction of the magnetic field caused by an item. It only shows you how strongly magnetic the item itself is. In some cases, one of these is more useful than the other. So ideally, of course, you would always use all the methods that you have available, but money, time, you have to pick and choose. Then you can use gravimetry, so measuring the gravity at an area. It's weaker above, for example, crypts, since you have air in the crypt instead of sand or rocks. Extremely weak, extremely little. The difference is minute, but again, if you have strong enough devices, you can measure that. And then seismology can also be used in. I think I've only seen one paper where seismology was used in archaeology. This was in Egypt, outside of the Great Pyramids. There's some kind of a massive ditch in the below the sand in the rock. It might have even been hewn by the Egyptians themselves. I'm not quite sure. I'm not familiar with it, that thing. And this was mapped out with seismology. So you cause a small earthquake by hammering at the earth or setting up an explosive. Of course, in this case, not an explosive. I don't think the Egyptians would enjoy people setting up of explosives in the shadow of the pyramids. And then you set a line of geophones. These are like microphones, but they measure when the earth vibrates. And then you can calculate backwards from the result to arrive at the model of the structure in the earth that the waves had to get reflected by. The robot you claim to have encountered after the hopper malfunction, Mistress. It occurs to me that it might have been a recording. A recording of what? Of whom, Mistress? Renba was a skilled roboticist. You may have found a way to store a recording and force it into my core. It was a message, not a recording. I spoke to it. They are the same, Misters. Messages such as the professor sends you are not live connections. They are recorded personality states. As am I, Misters. There must be a Rebesque foil nearby, cut to resonate on Hopper's frequency. In short, for whatever reason, Renba went to a lot of trouble to speak with you, to you, Misters. Structure is barely intact, Misters. There's nothing here to find. So it appears that the connection between the robots and the ghosts or recordings seem to be getting stronger and stronger. We'll need to turn right shortly, Misters. This might get a little bit dystopic if you think of the robots being... What did you call your first robot, Misters? If you think of the robots being recordings of ancient humans being used as slaves. If you are familiar with the game Soma perhaps in English, this might remind you of that. It's a horror game about exactly this, recording people's brains and using them in robots. It's a bit of existential horror. The main character seems to be unable to understand that he does not move between bodies. He is copied, and the copy remains where the copy was taken from, which is fortunately not the case in Heaven's Vault, where instead of using the Star Trek method of teleportation, where you are killed and a copy of you is built at the destination, in Heaven's Vault you are destroyed and your components are rearranged at the destination. For the characters in Soma, the real people are all dead, and their copies live on in robotic bodies, in some cases unaware that they are robots. It's honestly quite disturbing. And I might have spoiled most of the philosophical content of the game, so if you haven't played it yet, you might not want to after this. Presumably you did not call it one, unless you were already planning your robocidal spray. Why does it matter what I called it? It's long gone. Done. It matters, misters. Robots are ancient. We are unique, irreplaceable. Once unmade, we cannot be remade. We matter. It's actually an excellent argument from 6. The robots are priceless artifacts. And Alia should know this. She should understand that they are just as valuable, if not more so, than the excavated artifacts that she looks for. If we could find a robot or machine, let's say, imagine one of the early steam engines from antiquity, that would be an amazing find. We would never destroy it. No archaeologist would ever dream of blowing it up. And yet, Alia keeps destroying her robots. It's quite bizarre on her part. I wonder if the well, Obviously, the writers thought of this as they wrote 6, addressing this paradox. But it will we'll have to see if the character of Alia comes to understand this and how she reacts. Of course, I think we will quickly find out how she reacts to the concept. The Withering Palace. Is she going to react in any way? Yes. Another thing, if there's anything here at all. Right, it's one of these cases where we can see forward a little bit, but not that much. There appears to be a trail in the water. There is some kind of ruin some distance away ahead. We are moving towards something. Whether or not this is palace itself, I don't know yet. Probably not, but it is marked on our map. Oh, this was a question about what the ruins again. I believe there's a very gentle force here. Just enough to sail. It may lead somewhere, it may not. A ruin from the Empire. The copper cup. The inscription, of course. Seems to be a fragment again. What do we have here? Love at the end. Perhaps your might be. Love and something will wasn't that? Love and something will. I think this still makes sense. So then it is not you, your, it might be you and love. Though perhaps not with. Let's take you away and put a with in here. Still nothing. What might we want here? It can't be your. We use that. Let's try with you. There's something missing. I don't think this is correct. Doesn't feel right. With is not there. I think this was already incorrect. Maybe the last love is incorrect. Alright, this was it. Love and something positive, religious. Song, perhaps? Will lift your friend, live at your heart. Let's put in heart. Good enough for now. Makes sense. I'd say this originates from the exact place we're looking for. It must be nearly there. This will make the exact spot we're looking for easier to locate. Ah. What does sailing normally even mean? Does it mean we are away from the thing? Who knows? Must concentrate on right. I will turn right. Let's take a look at the map. Yes, this would have been the direction I wanted to go anyway. Region of minor flow once again. Where? Yes. I'll take a right and then a right. That should take me to the place that looks the most interesting. Right and right. I feel like we're sailing through a cloud. In effect, misters, we are. Particles we can see are ice particles. Suspended in what is left of the river here. This seems like it will lead us to this this unexplored ruin, which is probably the garden or the palace. The Victorian palace is the one we are looking for at the moment, I think. The viable surface. So let's check out what this is, and then start ending this session. I don't think I have the energy to talk about more archaeology stuff, and I don't think it's worth moving that much forward with the game.
Down into a narrow, rocky canyon. Waves of dust made it impossible to breathe.
Is this? Yeah, it's getting to me.
This was the worst one yet.
You should not talk, misters. The dust will get into your throat. Just keep moving. This place 6. This is horrible. Why would the hologram girl wanted to come here? Why would anyone? It is indeed horrible, but I told you not to talk. I'll talk when I like, robot. How long can I last out here? Obviously you have about a minute without shelter. After that, the lungs will begin to struggle. Let's hope there's a palace here with walls. A wind shadow. This seems to be the kind of place where we can stop to gather our health. Yes. By all the waters, a wind shadow. It wasn't that unexpected, honestly. Well, anyway, I think this is enough for today. And for tomorrow, tomorrow I'm going to be drawing, I think. Probably at around the same time that I usually stream. So, the end for this recording. Thank you for watching, anyone on YouTube afterwards.